Over the last few months, we've taken a look at some unique titles in the Grand Theft Auto series. At first, it was sunny Vice City, where we immersed ourselves in a world filled with cocaine and the pursuit of the largest criminal empire, which, as we remember, happened twice. Then there were GTA Liberty City stories and GTA Vice City stories, two parts that are kind of prequels to GTA 3 and GTA Vice City. We also had a lot of interesting threads there, heavily changed maps, and an explanation of some issues that remained a big mystery to us for a good few years. And of course, we can't forget about GTA 4, which we still consider to be a true masterpiece when it comes to the game's plot. The storyline was very multi-threaded, and which often surprised the players. Anyway, the games we just mentioned enjoyed more and less success, but what is certain is that they were one of the most successful installments of the entire franchise. Unfortunately, as in the career of every studio, Rockstar North didn't only have some ups, but also downs. And yes, in the case of the game of today's episode, this comment might be greatly exaggerated, but taking into account other parts of GTA, Chinatown Wars simply does not look so good in comparison to them. Therefore, today, we would like to remind ourselves of GTA Chinatown Wars and check how good this game is. Welcome to the Gaming Investigators channel. Be sure to write a comment answering the question of what you like and what you don't like about GTA Chinatown Wars, and in the meantime, let's get straight to the point. Rockstar, seeing how the HD universe is growing to a large size and GTA 4 and DLCs are becoming a real success, decides to prove to the fans that they can create excellent titles also for handheld consoles. While in the case of GTA Liberty City stories and Vice City stories, they were good shots, in the case of Chinatown Wars, you can't quite say that, at least looking at the number of copies sold. At the very beginning, just after the release of the game, the ratings were not as high as in the case of other parts. But on the other hand, there was definitely no tragedy in this aspect. What could be worrying about GTA Chinatown Wars, however, is the sales pace we mentioned earlier, which very quickly showed that the assumptions of 2 million copies sold a year after the release are unlikely to be met. Therefore, the company quickly lowered its expectations by as much as 75%, namely to 500,000 units sold. The game also received a rather poor reception from the gaming community. We mean that people who decided to play GTA Chinatown Wars went through this production, did some side missions, and possibly found some interesting facts. It was not too often a situation where players willingly returned to this installment of GTA, unlike others. We didn't have too many discussions about mythology or cut content here, as with other installments. There are not so many things on the internet about curiosities and findings. And although there may be a lot of such things in this game, people who want to discover it all are not very eager to do so. Going further, when we look at the map in GTA Chinatown Wars, we can see that it is done quite well. A large part of the city has been reproduced simply decently, although those more stubborn will certainly notice some shortcomings. In this matter, it will be a minus that a lot of roads known to us and the whole of Alderney City have disappeared, which can be regretted probably the most. By the way, it's worth noting that Alderney City was originally supposed to be included on the map, but the idea was abandoned due to the limitations of the Nintendo DS console. And while this loss will be felt by every GTA Chinatown Wars player, the owners of a copy of the game for the Nintendo console must also take into account another loss. Namely, when playing the Nintendo DS version of the game, the player will be able to listen to songs from only 5 stations, while in the case of the PSP version of the game, the player has 11 radio stations at his disposal. This is a huge difference. Moving on to the next aspect, as in the case of strict gameplay, it is noticeable that the majority of the sounds in the game have been rudely used from previous titles from the 3D universe. On the other hand, the dialogues of pedestrians were copied from GTA 4.
Oh, look away from me, asshole! Help me! No!
So you can see that the game was made a bit quickly and carelessly, perhaps also to create something at a cost in short time that will be able to make a good profit. As for the storyline itself, it can be put simply but quite concisely. A good, short plot with a Chinese vibe. We can find a lot of threads, but the main theme is drug dealing and family ties. What is a great advantage, however, is that we learn surprisingly much in the plot, and there are noticeable small twists and turns. But unfortunately, the plot itself is very short, which means that in terms of the number of hours spent in the game, well, there's not much fun, which is a pity. Moving on to the next features, we should also say something about the mechanics that are part of the mission. If the mission fails, the player can start it again immediately. In addition, you can use the skip trip mechanic if you need to get to a specific place at the beginning after failing the current mission. We know this procedure primarily from GTA San Andreas, where in some missions we have the opportunity to use it. But what's interesting is that after completing the mission, you have to go through it again in full scope. What does this mean? Namely, this means that the player has to watch the cutscenes again and then do the mission. Funny enough, this is a combination of mechanics from GTA Vice City Stories and The Ballad of Gay Tony. As a curiosity, we will mention that in GTA VCS, after completing the story, the player can watch cutscenes from any mission in the hideout. On the other hand, missions can be repeated after completing the story of GTA The Ballad of Gay Tony, but cutscenes are not included there. In GTA Chinatown Wars, we also have a multiplayer mode available where you can find a total of 6 game modes. One of the modes is races and series of races, robbing trucks, or the classic deathmatch mode called Liberty City Survivor, which is a nice reference to GTA 3 and GTA Liberty City Stories. Just like in GTA San Andreas, Huang Li can recruit a member of his gang. It's not as advanced as in San Andreas, but it's still something. The very fight with opponents seems to be quite simple, which makes the game feel easy in general. The only factor that can seriously prevent us from performing attacks is the crosshair, which can run away at the wrong target. Looking at the range of vehicles available in this game, we are witnessing little Rockstar originality. Namely, you can find many names of vehicles that appear mainly in games from the 3D universe. Characteristic examples are go-karts from GTA San Andreas, taxis from GTA 3, and Sabre GT, which is known to us from Vice City. What's really striking is that Chinatown Wars introduces a new and very trivial police search system. The developers gave up the star system, and instead, we are chased only by policemen, police cars, and helicopters. To lower the pursuit level, you just have to destroy the vehicles chasing you. In short, if handheld controls are no problem for you, the police certainly won't be too. Furthermore, it is worth mentioning that the player can earn money in many different ways apart from story and side missions. One such unusual activity is making people tattoos or checking scratch cards from which you can win money, weapons, and sometimes even new hideouts. Many interesting minigames were also introduced to diversify the gameplay, which was partly intended to be a nod to typical arcade games. In the game, we can find unusual mechanisms that allow us to do things like searching garbage, breaking into a locked car, paying at a toll station, or killing with a sniper rifle. Particular emphasis was placed here on drug trafficking. This element was supposed to be introduced in GTA San Andreas, but this concept was eventually abandoned. There is no denying that this minigame has become one of the key controversies around this title, but as you can see in the example of Scarface: The World Is Yours, it was possible to create interesting mechanics of selling and buying drugs much earlier. A huge novelty compared to the previous parts is the palm top. As a reminder, until the creation of GTA Chinatown Wars, our protagonists use only pagers or phones. Thanks to the palm top, the player can receive emails from other characters or buy weapons from the website of the Ammunition Network, which at the time of the game began to operate more legally. Not only that, many story missions are given to the player using this device. An undoubted advantage of GTA Chinatown Wars is the very well-executed idea of a bird's-eye view. Apart from the fact that we get much nicer graphics, which is of course also caused by the game's production time, the camera itself is much more intelligent and neatly follows the protagonist. The game itself also brings something to the canon of the HD universe while offering great fun for less demanding people. It is worth emphasizing that, for the first time, the player receives a protagonist of Asian descent, which, after all, is a kind of breakthrough. The plot is written in an accessible way, as a consequence of which it is probably also difficult to find something outstanding there. A wide range of minigames, which, as in the case of RC missions, can be enjoyed by some players and annoyed by others, makes the whole game environment environment quite humorous. Moreover, the game is much easier than in the case of previous ones such as GTA 1, London, or 2, since we have a well-functioning radar and a map that we can use at every turn. Certainly, looking at this game through the prism of the other top-down parts, you can see a huge improvement and say that when it comes to those parts, this is the best title ever made. However, this is rather obvious because the previous part of GTA showing the gameplay from a bird's eye view appeared 5 years earlier. For this reason, the time itself, especially the one in which the gaming industry has made so much progress, completely excludes any competition for Chinatown Wars in its sector. The game simply had to look much better than GTA 1, GTA 2, or GTA Advance. To sum up today's review, after much thought, GTA Chinatown Wars convinces us more and more that the game was doomed to fail. While the fact that the developers decided to introduce some innovations that we have not experienced in the previous parts of the series deserves great praise, the approach taken by the developers regarding this game does not seem to be entirely correct. As mentioned before, some of the key gameplay elements, such as the storyline, were made on a whim. Although the game contains over 60 missions, these are not very complicated tasks, and besides, they do not add much to the whole lore. It's worth recalling that GTA Chinatown Wars belongs to the HD universe, and yet we won't find too many references to GTA 4 in the game, maybe apart from a few mentions of the Lost or Angels of Death. However, none of the GTA 4 characters or add-ons are mentioned, as if their fates were no longer important to us. In addition, the lack of Alderney City, which after all was an inseparable part of the Liberty State, was abandoned, and that was a huge mistake. It is undeniable that there are certainly people who will like this game. However, we simply believe that, due to the repetition of the 2D universe, the group of fans interested in this title will be simply negligible, and most players will prefer to reach for such GTA Liberty City stories or Vice City stories when it comes to PSP games. Be sure to also check out why we think GTA Vice City Stories is the most underrated game in the series. In the meantime, thank you for your presence and all your ratings and comments. Take care, and see you in the next episode. Bye!